Welcome to subtraction of number bases. In this lesson, I'll be showing you how to subtract one number base from the other. But before we get started, what are the things you need to note about subtraction of number bases? The first thing you need to know is when subtracting small number from a big number, you need to write down the value obtained directly. What do we mean by this? For an instance, you're given this value 6 minus 3. So 6 is the big number and 3 is the small number. So you are removing the small number from the big number. So in such scenario, you can write the value down directly. So 6 minus 3 will give 3. You can write down the value directly. You understand that? Okay. Another thing we need to note, when subtracting same number from each other, you can write the value obtained directly. So what do we mean by this? Let's see an example. You have this 5 minus 5 in base 8. So if you look at this number, they are the same numbers, 5, 5. So because they are same numbers, the result you obtain, you write that result directly. So 5 minus 5 will give 0. You get the logic? Okay. Another thing to note is this. When subtracting big number from a small number, then we say impossible. At this junction, all you need to do is to borrow the base from the adjacent digits. And after borrowing the base, the next thing will be for you to add that borrowed base to the number, and then you now perform your subtraction. So let's look at an example on that. You are given 41 minus 3 all in base 5. So all you need to do, if you look at this, remove 3 from 1. That is where the impossible comes in. Because 3 is bigger than 1, you cannot remove 3 from 1. So all you need to do there is to borrow 1 from the adjacent digit. But the one you are borrowing is the base you are borrowing. And the base that we have here is 5. So remember that when you borrowed 1 from here, 3 will be left here. Okay, so let's come to this. We borrow the base now, and our base is 5. So add that 5 plus this 1. Remember, add the borrowed base to the number. So we're adding the borrowed base. Our borrowed base is 5. 5 plus the number 5 plus 1, that will give us 6. So after the 6 now, we now say that 6 minus this 3. And then we get our value to be 3. Okay. Then remember that we borrowed 1 from this 4. So what will be left? 4 minus 1, and that will give us 3. So that means 3 will be left. Now is the time to show you the example 1. We have to subtract 212 from 426 in base 7. So what you need to do is to say 426 minus 212. So something like this in base 7. Okay, so let's see. 6 minus 2. Well, that is easy to do. 6 minus 2 will give 4. Then 2 minus 1 will give 1. And 4 minus 2 will give 2. This is just like straight subtraction. Our answer here is 214. Let's also look at example 2. We have to subtract 264 from 537 in base 8. So that means we'll have 537 up minus 264 as this, all in base 8. Okay, so let's start to do that now. 7 minus 4, that will give us 3. And then can we remove 6 from 3? This is where the impossible comes in. So what you need to do now is to borrow 1 from here, and when you borrow 1 from here, you're borrowing the base. So take note of that. You borrow 1 from here, so what will remain here will be 4. So remember that. That means we have 4 that will be left here, after which we borrow the 1. Then the 1 that we borrowed here is the base, and our base is 8. So what we need to do is to add that 8 to this 3. So we have 8 plus 3, and that will give us 11. So 11 now, we now say 11 minus 6. 11 minus 6 will give us 5. Remember that it is 4 that is remaining here. So we say 4 minus 2, and that will give us 2. I hope you get that. Okay, let me try to explain this place of borrowing again. 6 in 3. Since 6 cannot go in 3, we can't say 3 minus 6. So all you need to say there is impossible. You borrowed 1 from the adjacent digit, and that 1 that you are borrowing is the base you're borrowing, and the base we have here is 8. So all you need to do is to add that base 8 plus that number that is borrowing. So 3 plus 8, that gives 11. You now say that 11 minus 6, that's where we got the 5 from. And then because we borrow 1 from this 5, our value that is remaining there will be 4. So we now say 4 minus 2, and that will give us 2. So our final answer is 253. More example coming in. Let's look at example 3. We asked to subtract 352 from 427 in base 9. Okay, so we have 427 minus 352 all in base 9. So let's start now. 7 minus 2, that is direct, and that will give us 5. And then remove 5 from 2, that is impossible. So all you need to do is to borrow 1 from the adjacent digit, and the adjacent digit here to the left hand side is this 4. So what you need to do now, that 1 that you're borrowing, when you borrow 1 from here, the value that will be left will be 3. When you borrow 1 from here, the value that will be left here will be 3. Take note of that. And then the next thing you need to know is the 1 that you borrow from here is the base you're borrowing. And what is the base? The base here is 9. So that means you're borrowing base. So that borrowed base, you add it to the number that is borrowing. So 9 plus 2, and that will give 11. And then you now say 11 minus 5. 11 minus 5 will give 6. So the next thing will now be, what is left here is 3. If you remember, we borrow 1 from the 4. So we have 3 minus 3 now, and that will give us 0. We can write that direct. So since 0 is the starting digit here, we can do without this 0. 065 is the same thing as saying 65. So that means our final answer is 65. Okay, now is the time to look at example 4. In this example 4, we asked to remove 110 in base 2 from 1101 in base 2. Okay, so all we need to do there, we need to say 1101 minus 110, all in base 2. So let's start now. 1 minus 0, and that will give us 1. Then remove this 1 from 0. Can this 1 go in 0? Impossible. So what you need to do there is to borrow 1 from the adjacent digit. So you are borrowing 1 from this place. So when you borrow 1 from this adjacent digit, that means what will be left here will be 0. Take note of that. Okay, so the one that we are borrowing here is the base we are borrowing. And what is the base? The base here is 2. So what we need to do is to add that 2 to the number that is borrowing. 2 plus 0. And 2 plus 0 will give 2. And then now is the time for us to subtract 2 minus 1. And that will give us 1. You get the idea? Okay. For this next stage now, since we borrowed 1 from here, that means we have 0 left here. So let's see now. Can you remove this 1 from this 0? That is impossible. So what you need to do is to borrow 1 from the adjacent digit. And the adjacent digit is this 1 right here. So when you borrow 1 from here, that means this one is 0 that will remain here. Okay, so that 1 that you borrow is the base that you borrowed. So because our base is 2, that means we borrowed 2. So we add that 2 plus this 0. 2 plus 0, that gives us 2. Then we now say that 2 minus this 1. 2 minus 1 will give us 1. Then you remember that we borrow 1 from here, and what is left is 0. So 0 minus 0, since there is nothing here, is as equivalent to 0. 0 minus 0 will still give 0. So that means we have 0, 1, 1, 1. But we can do without this 0. So 0, 1, 1, 1 is the same thing as saying 1, 1, 1. So our final answer is 1, 1, 1.